Did you know that foreign owners of US LLCs can legally pay 0% taxes? Yeah, you heard it right. If you're an international entrepreneur with a US LLC and you set everything up the right way, you won't need to pay US taxes. You might be asking, well, how is that possible? Stick around to the end of the video to find out. My name is John Pastor, co-founder of Nonresident Investor. Welcome to our channel, where we cover various topics about investing in US real estate, opening US LLCs and bank accounts, offshore tax planning, US taxes, and other subjects that interest international entrepreneurs. In today's video, I want to talk to you about how you can open an LLC in the US and not pay taxes. I'll also share examples of how the taxation process works, so make sure you stay until the end. To support our work, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Before we begin, I have to emphasize that this video only applies to non-residents. If you're a US citizen, like myself, or a green card holder, you'll have no other option but to pay US taxes. That's just how it is. Now, let's explain why a foreign-owned LLC doesn't have to pay taxes in the US. To start, we have to examine specific IRS regulations. The first one, which is important to a tax-free US LLC, is Code Section 865. Without getting too technical, this code defines a US resident as a citizen, a resident alien, or a corporation. If you're not any of those three, you're a non-resident. This is defined in subsection G of this same code. The second important thing is that LLCs, for tax purposes, are treated as disregarded entities. What does that mean? Well, to be clear, LLCs don't pay taxes. Instead, the owner of an LLC is the one paying taxes through an individual tax form. For example, if I have a US LLC, my LLC is not paying taxes. I am. The same goes for you. If you open a US LLC under your name, you will personally be responsible for taxes, not your LLC. When an LLC has multiple members, an LLC might be required to withhold taxes, but ultimately, individuals are the ones who have an obligation to pay taxes. Now, let's talk about what you're actually taxed on as a non-resident. Code Section 864C defines effectively connected income as income derived from US sources. This is the type of income you pay taxes on as a non-resident. To keep it simple, you should look at it as income from services provided inside the US or goods sold inside the US. For example, let's say you own an IT company in India. If you have to travel to the US and be physically present there to perform a service, the money you get paid for is effectively connected and taxable. However, if you perform that service from India without traveling to the US, then it's not effectively connected, and you don't have to pay US taxes on it. This is defined in the Code Section 862A3, which says that performing services outside the US are not US sources of income, meaning that income is not effectively connected and as such is not taxable. Now, when it comes to selling goods, things get more complicated. Technically, as long as you don't sell anything in the US, your LLC will be tax-free. If you have US customers, you can still avoid paying taxes, but it's a bit more nuanced. Let's say you have an online shop and you sell goods directly to a US consumer. In that case, you probably won't have to pay taxes. However, if those same goods are stored in a US-based warehouse that you own and are shipped from there to the consumer, you'll have to pay taxes. But if you sell your products through Amazon and use their warehousing, then you won't have to pay taxes. I know, it's kind of complicated. So if you're in a situation like this and you're not 100% sure, you can book a free call and we'll help you figure it out. Number 2. Requirements to avoid US taxes. We've talked about IRS codes and why some foreign-owned LLCs don't have to pay taxes. Now, I discuss what must be true in order for you to avoid US taxes as a non-resident. First, you can't be a US citizen. If you are, all income you make is taxable. The same goes for green card holders. If you have a green card, you have to pay US taxes no matter where you are in the world. Even if you don't live in the US, you still have to pay taxes. Second, if your business operates inside the US, for example, if you own rental property in the US, Because that property is physically in the States, all income from it is effectively connected and taxable. Third, if you have US-based employees, offices, or dependents, you'll have to pay US taxes. There's a way to avoid this by hiring US employees as independent contractors, but it can get a little tricky and nuanced. How you go about this will depend on each individual case, so make sure you know what you're doing before you get into it. Number 3, opening a US LLC as a non-resident. We have an in-depth video on this subject, so I won't go into too much detail here. If you want to check it out, the link will be in the description. However, for the purposes of this video, I want to tell you about what I consider to be the 3 most important things when opening an LLC as a foreigner. First is picking the right US state. The best option for tax-free LLCs owned by foreigners is to go with either Wyoming or Delaware. These two are by far the best option for non-residents who don't have effectively connected income. Setting up an LLC in either state is really quick. It can be done in less than a day. Both states offer high levels of anonymity and protection to the LLC owners and are extremely business friendly. The second important thing is getting a US address so you can actually open a US bank account and start doing business. Since the beginning of 2025, it's become increasingly difficult to open a US bank account. Many digital banks are no longer accepting the addresses of registered agents or virtual offices. This means that if you want to have your US LLC fully operational, you need to figure out how to get a US address. This can be tricky to accomplish. Here at NRI, we've been dealing with this stuff for many years and have opened hundreds of LLCs for our non-resident clients. If you're having issues with getting a US address for opening a US bank account, book a free call with us and we'll help you. The third important thing to know is that even if your LLC is tax-free, you still need to file tax forms each year. Don't worry, you don't have to pay anything, but you have to file the correct forms. For single-member LLCs, you have to file the 5472 form and a BOI report. 5472 form is filled out each year. The BOI report you have to file once in the first 30 days of opening your LLC and every time you change the ownership structure. For multi-member LLCs, you have to file the 1065 form each year and BOI when you form your company. Now, I promised to share a couple of real-life examples of how taxation in the US works, so let's move on to that. Here are some examples of foreign-owned US LLC taxation. Our first example comes from the beautiful country of Italy. Country's great, but it has a high corporate income tax of 24%. Our client there owns a digital business that provides HR services across Europe, and they're looking for ways to lower their tax bill. They contacted us, and we helped them open a US LLC. Because they provide services outside of the US, their income is not effectively connected, is not US sourced, and most importantly, is not taxable under US laws. By opening a US LLC, this client managed to save a lot of money on taxes. They also used those savings to invest in growth, which allowed them to scale up and increase their revenue. This is another huge benefit of having a foreign-owned US LLC. Use the tax savings to grow your business. The only thing our Italian client has to do to comply with US laws is file the 5472 form each year. We actually do this for them. It can help you as well if you ever choose to open a US LLC. The second example I have for you today comes from a cold yet beautiful part of the world, Canada. Our client from Canada bought a vacation property in Florida. They rented out with Airbnb. I set them up with a US mortgage to buy the property after Luca helped them open an LLC and deal with taxes. So what taxes do they have to pay? Well, because their property is physically in the US, all the income it generates is effectively connected and taxable. This means that they have to file the 1065 form for LLC and 1040 NR form, which is an individual income tax return for non-residents. The third example comes from our good friends in India. One of our clients operates an IT company there. They provide various services to people all over the world, including the US. Because those services are performed outside the US, the income they generate is not US sourced. It is not taxable in the States. This means that the only form they have to file to keep their US LLC operational is the 5472 form. The fourth and final example of how foreign-owned US LLCs are taxed comes from one of our French clients. This client owns a drop shipping company that sells products across Europe. They don't have any US clients, meaning they don't earn effectively connected income and don't have to pay US taxes. However, If they did want to start shipping to the US, whether they have to pay taxes or not can get complicated. The factors that matter are what states they ship their products to and whether they ship products directly to the consumer or not. If you're in this situation and own a dropshipping company and sell or want to sell products in the US, I recommend you get in touch with us. There are a lot of nuances to this, and it's easy to make a mistake if you're not 100% sure what you're doing. You can book a free call and we'll go from there. Thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video and found it informative. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you have suggestions on how we can improve this whole operation or have a specific subject you want us to cover, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if you need help figuring out whether you can open a tax-free US LLC, write down your country of origin and type the business you're in down in the comments. We'll try to give you an answer as soon as possible. That's it for today. Once again, thank you for sticking with me and see you in the next video on the Non-Resident Investor channel.